Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered about your personal purpose and your power? Well, we're going to unlock it on purpose. It's time to wake up the Giants. Yeah. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, co-creator of Wake Up with Giants TV, a tribe of giants. Uh, 12 Journeys Coaching, freaking
All of the
amazing stuff.
things.
All the things.
All of the things.
And I'm here with Mr. Nicholas T. Smith, the author of The Giants and the Smalls. Oh, wait.
For those that are inverted, upside down, it's
It
perfect.
comes in sideways. That was funny. I must have put it back upside down in the first place.
That's funny.
He's also written a tortoise, the tortoise's hair, which is all around our border here. There's Frankie off to the side, and up there, boom.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, he's written a lot of amazing things. If there's a guy to follow, I'm telling you what, it's Nicholas T. Smith. So
Thank you, man.
been following him around for a long time.
We've created a few things together, so it's good.
Yes, we have. Oh, I'm so excited. We've got our SG programs. That's our Sum Gigante groups that help you go through all of our 12 journeys, which we discovered inside of the Giants and the Smalls, to help you holistically build a whole human. helps you
Sometimes
to
horrifically.
yeah,
Horrifically holistic humans.
holistically and horrifically
Yeah.
as you dive through it. And actually today's guest has gone through that program.
He's gone through it, and he's a partner with us in our 12 Journeys partner program. And we look forward to having some of the other partners on as well. So should we introduce him?
I think we should. I think we shall.
I think we shall. So our guest today is Richard Darone. He was born in San Francisco and now is living just outside of Yosemite. He saw smoke outside his window today, and that's not a good sign in California. But it was just people lighting up their wood-burning stoves, so that's a good thing.
Whew.
So he's safe, everybody. Richard is the CEO of Richard Darone International and the creator of Recovery and Beyond. With over 20 years of experience as a state-certified alcohol, drug, and rehabilitation counselor, Richard is a true leader in the recovery community. So he holds certifications at some of the top programs, including UCLA Addiction Program and Cognitive Behavioral Interventions in Recovery. What sets Richard apart is his unique holistic approach to healing, incorporating transformational breathwork and healing, and the work of Byron Katie. His journey from traditional addiction counseling to blending these powerful transformative practices makes him a perfect guest to inspire us today. And help me welcome Richard Darone to the show. It's good to have you here.
Oh, it's such a privilege. I've been looking forward to talking to the Giants here.
Well, now I can get rid of these because I don't have to do any more reading. And the good news is, Richard, you just incorporated the 12 journeys into your work as well in recovery, which is pretty awesome. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But we like to go into your journey. This is about you and what you've gone down as far as your life goes, and how you evolved into who you are today. And I want to go back to the beginning of time with you because you got an interesting start to your life. Can you take us back a little bit?
Well, gee, how far back do you want to go?
Well, maybe a lot of bit. A little bit might be a few years, but let's go all the way back to the beginning.
All right. In the beginning, wow, that's
Like
ancient
the
time.
Bible.
That's ancient time. Let's break out the Bible
beginning
here.
Was the Richard, and the Richard was.
My beginning of my life is a little bit different than most people. Most people have a mom, a dad, a grandma, a grandpa. I was given up at birth. I was placed in an orphanage. I was adopted 3 times before I found a family to land on too. And so I kind of grew up with no identity. Didn't find out I was adopted until I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And that was a shock to my system. So growing up, it was a loving family, but I was the middle child of this family. So eventually I became, as a family dynamic, a scapegoat.
Mm.
So not having a true identity until I got older was a challenge. It was a challenge.
But you didn't even know your name, right?
I was adopted 3 times. So by the time I was 3 years old, I had 3 different names.
Oh my gosh.
Growing up, when people would call me a name, I wouldn't respond to it because I didn't know which one was mine. So I was like a Walter, a David, and I think now I'm a Richard. I didn't find out a lot of my history until I went through social services. They're the ones that handled it, because the state of California will refuse to unlock my my records, my birth records. And I didn't know about that until I tried to get a passport in older days, and they couldn't find my birth certificate.
Holy cow.
So,
yeah. So you started out really not knowing who you are. Identity is unstable. You find out at 8, 9 years old that that you were adopted. So your world gets interrupted right there, and that has impact, right?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, when and we'll lay that as the foundation of the show, is because for you and many others, you know, Ryan might share some of his story here too, is you know, that identity gets established pretty early on, right? And then it carries. You know, if we look at it as an onion, it's the core of that onion, and then everything else gets put on top of that. So by the time you realize that you're building a core of an onion, you don't even know what the core is. Is that right?
That's right. I mean, there was no basis for it. You go to school, you see these people with a family dynamic, and they're talking about their grandma, their grandpa, their whatever, and you've got no root, so to speak.
Yeah. There is no core, right?
Yep.
Huh. So how does that impact you with your identity? Like what happened from there, from the time you wake up to that? What happened from there?
When I woke up from that, it was a built-in resistance to everything. So I resisted my way through life. I learned that I strived for, as Katie would call it, I looked for love, approval, and appreciation, and I wasn't finding it. So my whole premise of early childhood is based up on I resisted everything. And if I was one of these kids who, if you told them you couldn't do something, I would do it, and then I would just self-sabotage and destroy it.
So you do it to prove that you could do it and then destroy it.
Yeah.
Okay. And why? Why that, do you think?
Attention.
Yeah.
I was just seeking love from somewhere, or approval from somewhere, or wanted to be appreciated.
Yeah.
So you're always seeking, but you really don't know where you're going.
Yeah. And so everything becomes external, right? So your validation, your identity, all external, all out here, right?
Yep. Everything's on the outside, nothing on the inside.
So when you go through Byron Katie's work, that starts to awaken you to no, we got to pull that back here. But until you recognize that, there's still the work of learning how to do that. You're putting all your energy out here. I want attention, and any attention will do.
Any attention will do. The more negative attention I would get, more recognized with negative attention than with positive attention.
Okay. Yeah.
So being the middle child, older sibling that was biologically from my mother, who was a decade older than me, and then a younger sister who was also adopted, who was 5 years younger than me. So you had the hero, my older brother, and then you had the attention of everything going to my baby sister. So I became the scapegoat.
Yeah. I could see, you know, and for others that are watching this, is that foundation could become a formula for staying stuck and, you know, being the victim of life. And later on, you know, we're going to talk about addiction and recovery. it could be the foundation of addiction, because if you don't know who you are and you don't know how to manage that, and you also look outside of you for all of your identity and acceptance and control, then life could feel very uncontrollable. And so I could see how that would lay a foundation for addiction. Now, did you lean into addiction?
Oh
Is
yeah,
that something that you experienced?
yeah,
Yeah.
something that I did experience, and I think I'm proud to say that for the last 27 years, I've been living a clean and sober lifestyle.
Yeah. And why do you think you leaned on addiction? Like, what do you think that evolved? Why do you think it evolved into that?
I believe I was seeking for an identity, and since I wasn't the ideal child,
Yeah.
I leaned towards the radical people. And growing up in the era that I grew up in, and in the city that I grew up in, growing up in San Francisco, the
Yeah.
late 60s, love, peace, dope.
Yeah. It was just easy access and a way for identity.
It was an easy access, and it was an easy way to escape.
Okay. Yeah. And people do get caught up in that. And I think with addiction, a lot of times too, you feel isolated, misunderstood. Is that accurate?
Yes, and in the period of time that I grew up in,
Yeah.
I was accepted by that group of people.
Okay.
I could just escape and go to Golden Gate Park and just go get high and hang out.
Yeah.
Didn't ever have to go home.
Yeah. Well, and that's a form of acceptance. So you're going to look for acceptance where you can get it.
Yep.
And that makes so much sense to me. There's the study, the Rat Park study. You familiar with that?
A little.
Yeah, where they hooked rats on heroin, isolated them, it gave them heroin and water and food, and heroin was the only positive thing in their environment. So they leaned on the heroin and they got addicted to it. Many of the rats died in isolation from the heroin overdose. But then they did a study with this, the same population of rats, right? And they put heroin in their environment, created a whole park for them, water, food, everything. And not one rat went for the heroin. Not once. They tried it, but never went back to it. And so there was this social acceptance that allowed them to step out of that addiction. I mean, I know humans are a little different from that, but we do seek acceptance. We seek belonging more than anything. And we're wired for it. So when we don't get it, isolation kills people, shuts them down.
It does. I found that I've been servicing the recovery community for a very long time, and isolation is, you could have 20 people with substance abuse in a treatment center and they all isolate.
They go off on their own.
They just stay in their room, or they'll go out on the property, or they'll just go somewhere, and it takes weeks for them to finally populate and come together.
And is that where the healing starts to happen, is when they populate?
That's where the healing starts to happen. And a lot of people don't understand that, especially with addiction and a substance abuse, you have to go through a physical change.
Yeah.
The chemicals that you're putting in your body are changing your brain chemistry, and you have to go through a physical change, whether it's heroin or alcohol or methamphetamines or whatever. Your body has to transform itself back, and that's when they start to develop a community, because now they're finding clarity.
I think of, we talk about the physiological brain, right? The neurons and how the neurons are created. When we go through the 12 journeys, it's the first journey because we like to lay that foundation. But there's another part of that. There's the chemical brain, right? The emotional brain, that if we were to rely on our neurons in a fight or flight scenario, we would end up dead because we wouldn't think fast enough. So chemicals are designed to get that immediate response. And I heard with things like with methamphetamines, that when they release all that dopamine, they release all of your dopamine all at once.
Yes.
And then people end up chasing that dragon to try and get that feeling back, because it's the most incredible high you could ever have. But then your receptors become numbed out to it because it overloads the system. And then you're chasing that dragon. And so there's that chemical dependence that happens on the brain, where that chemical that once flooded is no longer there. And now you're just spending your life chasing that dragon. And that's why it's so addicting.
And
go ahead.
What people don't understand also about addiction is that on the physical aspect of it,
Yeah.
your first high that you have is the best one you'll ever have.
Mm.
And you just keep chasing that dragon, like you say.
Yeah.
You keep looking for that same response all the time, and you think that more is better, so you keep increasing and your tolerance level grows.
Yeah, and the tolerance is the big key there, is because the tolerance level is so high now that it takes much, much more. And that's where you see people overdosing on those drugs, is because the amount they put in, or they go off of the drug and they come back to the dose they had and it kills them.
Yep.
Because they built up that tolerance. So I want to play right here for a little bit, because it's not just addiction to drugs. It's addictions can be formed around a lot of things. It can be pornography, it could be sex, it could be eating, it could be over exercising can become an addiction. You know, anything that we do to excess to numb out to our lives becomes an addiction, or could become an addiction, right? If we can no longer control it. But what's happening is we're wiring our brains for that response, and then when we don't get it, we have withdrawals from that, and so we try and get that back. And so I can see the foundation. Let me just catch that up. Is that when you look at the foundation of, you started out in life really with not much of an identity, 3 different names. By 8 years old, 9 years old, you find out that you're adopted, and then that rocks your world, and you don't know how to handle it because you're 8 years old. Let's be honest. What does an 8-year-old know about handling life? And then you're left with your own devices at that point, and then you keep developing, and then as you develop, you start developing other friendships of people who can accept you and understand you, and also you find things that feel accepting, you know, maybe your whatever your addiction was, your drugs, and then it just becomes this bad snowball, right?
Oh yeah.
It just grows, right?
It grows and grows and grows.
Yeah.
And I found out that in my adolescent years, it was easy for me to be manipulated by people who were older. And that led me down a whole different road. So I was adopted. I did the best that I could until about the age of 16. And by then I totally crashed out and got sent to foster care. So then I was with a foster family for a couple of years, and that was the beginning of waking up.
Okay. Yeah. So, man, there's just like, I think about how important development is. You develop from 0 to 25, and then you go into cognitive decline from there. But most of your pruning happens I think it's by the time you're 25 years old, you have 50% of your neural connections are pruned. And so it's a substantial amount. And you reach 95% of your adult brain size by age 5. So you go through this massive growth by age 5. And then you start pruning out from age 5 on up until age of 25. And then you go on cognitive decline. And it doesn't mean you can't grow new neurons. You continue to do that through life, but it becomes more difficult over time. It takes more process to really create patterns. But in those younger years, those patterns get anchored in fast and they stay at the core. And so to hear, you know, during your formative years, and what I love is you're not holding yourself as victim to that. You're just having understanding of it. This is my story, and this is why I am where I am. But those formative years were totally interrupted. There was no stability there. Is that accurate?
You hit the nail on the head. There was no stability there.
Yeah.
And when I examine, as Katie says, who would you be without your story? It took me another 25 years to understand exactly that I was carrying a story I didn't need.
Yeah. And this is where, when people understand the brains, right, that the way they work, and you waking up doesn't mean it's easy. I mean, we talked about that in our last show. It's like waking up can be a punch to the gut, you know, and then you say 25 years to start to rewrite that story. It's a process of rewriting. I mean, you think about it, your first 25 years, you're one thing, and then you spend the next 25 years rewriting that story. Can you walk us through that? So you said at 16, you had an awakening, or you started to wake up.
At 16, I was put into foster care, and I was with a single mom with 4 girls, and all the girls were younger than me. So it was my responsibility to make sure I took care of and protected these 4 girls. So that was a piece of responsibility I'd never had before. And it kind of woke me up to the fact that, yeah, you have to work to get to where you want to go. And even though I was struggling with using alcohol and substances to get by, the next 25 years put me on a path of, if I work hard, I'll get somewhere.
Okay.
But I still had that subconscious self-sabotage effect on me.
Yeah.
So as I was looking for the next 25 years, I was searching and not really finding anything, but I had developed a really strong work ethic.
Yeah.
And a curiosity. So that's when I say I was awake, because it took me 25 years just to grate that curiosity so that I could wake up. And there was a specific period in my life where I did wake up, and it was totally unexpected.
Yeah, let's play with that part. So from the awakening on, just as a process, I like the process of things. You have an awareness, so you wake up to it, and it's there. And it doesn't mean it goes away. It's just simply it's there. So when it's there, then a lot of people get spun up in shame and guilt over it being there, or judgment or justification over it being there. So they become the victim or the martyr of it, or they shame themselves because of it, or they become unworthy or insecure because of it. But it just simply is there. So when you recognize it's there, to gently awaken to that, and a lot of people don't know how to do that. That gentle awakening is, here's an analogy that pops to mind is, if I startle my kids awake, they're a completely different creature than if I gently wake them up,
Mm-hmm.
And so for many of us, though, we have these startling moments that wake us up, and then we don't know what to do with it. And so we tend to go back to our judgments. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. When I was in my 40s, that was my awakening period.
Yeah.
And it was a shock to my system. I was asked to go to I guess you would call it a seminar, 10-day seminar. And I had no idea what it was. I thought it was just another little business seminar type of thing that I've experienced in my life. And I went there, and there was this big spiritual awakening. It was 10 days of basically detox and inner work. And that's where I discovered Byron Katie. I discovered transformational breathwork. I found spirituality for the first time. So it was like cracking open an egg. All the stuff that I had held inside for all this time got opened up. Never experienced emotion ever until I went to that seminar, where I cried my eyes out and was with a group of people that enlightened me to what spirituality was. And that just opened up a whole new world, or a realm of curiosity. And that's where personal development came in effect for me.
Ooh, I'm having an insight here with the curiosity, right? If you don't have hope for a brighter future, at least be curious. That's the thought that's coming up, because curiosity garners knowledge. You want to learn things. And when you want to learn things, you start to input that in your brain, which in turn creates hope. Because, when we look at hope theory, and when you have a vision for a brighter future, hope theory says that when you have that, it generates hope when you have a clear vision. And then not only that, you're the one that's going to create it. And third, you'll overcome any obstacle to make it a reality. And so you'll pursue it. But often in the beginning, you don't have that clear vision. And so curiosity becomes the thing that fills you so that you can start to generate that hope. And then once you have that hope, then you have, the brighter future idea, and you start working toward that. But how interesting that curiosity is kind of the segue into hope. That curiosity is the hope until you can create the vision for that to become the hope. Do you agree with that? Disagree? Do you have a different view?
I agree 100%, because it was the curiosity that opened the door for me.
Yeah.
And having been wounded most of my life, Rumi states that wounds open up the crack to let the light in.
Yeah.
It let the light in for me, so that I could actually go, well, what is this about? And I could go seek out and look at my own story and develop to a point where I go, I don't need to live this story anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the curiosity gave me the hope or the light to keep pursuing. Well, if this did this to me, let's go find out about it. And being the person that I was, when I found out about Byron Katie, I went to her school, I volunteered, I eventually worked for her for 2 years. When I found spirituality, and I met a monastic, and he guided me in a way that I'd never been guided before, with no judgment. And this curiosity and this hope that kept enlarging itself inside of me, that gave me the opportunity to find the different areas of my life where creation was possible.
Yeah, beautiful. We have a quote that we share that from Einstein. He says, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." And the paradox there is that the knowledge becomes the basis of imagination. And so when you get curious, you start accumulating all that knowledge. And then that knowledge creates imagination. And that imagination creates vision. And that vision creates hope. And so it's like this, they all have to come together. And it's interesting to me that you went from really kind of a darkness, putting in a position of responsibility of, hey, you need to take care of these girls. And that became the awakening of, well, how do I do that? I don't even know how to do that. And then you continue to grow, you get put in foster care, and it's like, I got to do something. And then you start getting curious, well, what do I do? And somebody invites you to something and it opens a pathway and you're like, that's really exciting. I really like that. And then you get this curiosity around that and that grows. It's almost like you bust open the seed and that starts to grow in you. And then you start to just imagine more and more, like, what else could I learn? And how many people go and they're like, I'm going to learn about Byron Katie. And not only that, I'm going to work for Byron Katie. You probably didn't know that when you stepped into it. You just liked what Byron Katie was about. Or did you know you were going to work with her in advance?
I had no inkling of where my life journey was. So like you said, when you got that seed planted,
yeah,
and that curiosity is the nurturing part of nurturing that seed as watching it grow.
Yeah.
I had no concept in my whole entire life that I would end up doing what I did for 20 years as a counselor, but I kept nurturing that seed.
Yeah.
I kept nurturing that seed going, yeah, this is where I needed to go and where I needed to be, because then it was creating an identity. Something I had never had before in my life is I could look at myself not as from the outside in, but from the inside out.
Yeah, I think of Steve Jobs' quote, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only do that looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will connect. And when you have that knowing that this is the plant or the growth that I need to nurture here, you don't know how it's going to play out, but you just know that's where you're supposed to be. And that knowing, it to me is some of that vision. That's some of the impact of, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I can't fully see how this is going to play out, but I know this is where I belong.
What I found in my spiritual growth was self-realization.
Okay.
And that self-realization leads to self-actualization, which eventually led me to purpose.
Yeah. Wow.
And I had no direction whatsoever of where I was going. But as they say in recovery, it's about surrendering.
Yeah.
It's about accepting.
Ryan, I'm curious if you're seeing some parallels for your life here.
Yeah, for sure. There's a few things that are different, and so I'm like sitting here and trying to relate as much as possible to Richard's experience. But I can relate to the feeling of trying to find your identity, which I think is, it's what everybody wants. Everybody wants to be something, and be loved, be a part of a community, and that's usually a family dynamic. And when it's not that, searching for it, it's, you usually are going off of your child brain, the brain that's trying to keep you safe as well, and trying to make sense of an adult world with the brain of a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kid. and then it packs on all of these layers and layers, like you talked about with the onion. And then you start doing things, whether it's seeking attention, self-sabotaging, all of this stuff, and pulling back those layers when you do become awakened, I guess, to how you've been, and then it's no longer working for you in a healthy way. um it again attacks your identity a little bit, and it's a tough moment. I remember crying my eyes out too, and uh Ray's on here as well, and she cried, as her identity was shattered, or part of her identity was shattered, and had to rediscover herself. And Richard, I relate to a lot of that, and mine was in my late 30s. You were in your 40s as you start re-identifying and trying to figure out who is who really is Richard, and what do I do with that, and how do I not shame the crap out of myself so that that I don't continue to self-sabotage or continue to decline. How can I look at the addictions, and they could be the alcohol, drugs, things like that, but they also could be, I'm addicted to self-sabotage. I'm addicted to um, attention, seeking attention. I'm addicted to living my life a certain way because I get a certain result when I do that thing. I get attention that I was craving. And it really starts to, as you find the awareness. Nick talks about this as unpopping a popcorn seed. Once you become awakened to who you've been, it's really, really hard to like close it all back up. It doesn't just come back together. It's a popcorn seed. It's boom, it's out there. You could try to put your head in the sand, but you always know the way that you've now been behaving. And it's a journey that from that point on, um, takes time. It takes a community. It takes somebody like a Byron Katie. It takes somebody like a Nick Smith. It takes somebody like an Angela Mayora, who was on here. I saw her. She's a powerful coach, um, to 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 help you as you're moving through that, because you're still trying to operate with the brain that you had and trying to make sense of that. And they can lovingly put their arms, lock them right by you, and walk forward and help you as you're going through that journey. Now you have to still do the work. There, I haven't found anywhere where magically, because you're awake, that life is, sunshine and rainbows and all the things. Now there is sunshine and rainbows in it, but there also can be a lot of deconstructing. There can also be a lot of pain and sadness and heartache, a lot of tears. That's where you need somebody that can hold space with you as you walk through your journey and help you guide you as you're going. But that's so far, that's what I've gleaned off of Richard's story, and it's amazing, just to watch or to hear or listen, uh, and see parallels, in my own life as he's been talking, and as much as I can relate, because that's a heavy thing. I was adopted into um, a very loving family when I was 3. So I don't remember all of those things, but I do remember searching for my identity, and that's as close as I can relate to that, Richard. But my hat's off to you for doing those things and going down that road.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, brother.
So that identity, pull Richard into the spot. You get to sit there uncomfortably while I talk there.
Yeah.
No, the pathways, right? Like, so you see the parallels in life, in that awakening. You wake up to that, and just waking up isn't always easy. And that's where you see people, in that awakening process. You look for things to feel comfort as you go through that, relief. And this is where I could see addictions coming up, because at first it's like, yeah, that feels really good, but then you become chemically dependent on it, and then it no longer feels good. Now it's starting to tear down your body and your mind, and everything else is changing the wiring. And then you're stuck with, well, how do we overcome that? How do we move past that to overcome the addiction And then, like you said, find your purpose and lean into it, your passion. And for you, what have you discovered to be that process of healing that?
When I work with individuals, you have to meet individuals exactly where they're at. Every person who suffers from substance abuse has their own individual story. It's not so much about learning something new but it's more about unlearning that victim mode that we've been living into. Like Ryan was talking about, there's guilt, there's shame, there's self-esteem,
blaming.
Yeah, blaming. Oh, you blame everybody else for your issue. So when I'm working with people that are coming through the other side of addiction, I work on what they're passionate about. Could be about anything. Could be art, could be writing, could be riding a horse, could be whatever. But you find that crack in that wound that lets the light in, and you start building from that perspective, so that you, like Nick was saying, you're peeling back the onion, but basically you're unlearning all that emotional.
Well, and you're adding in a new layer of the onion. So you're replacing that onion layer with something more powerful or aligned with your purpose. So it's not like you just get rid of it and there's a void there. Now you got to reprogram it, because what will happen if you don't is you'll program in some of the old patterns into that place.
Yeah. So recognizing the patterns are very, very important. So what I learned from the 12 journeys is that running on a habitual mode, which an addict does, that you have to reprogram the brain so that it's running on a positive mode. So it's like a lotus flower. A lotus flower has 1,000 petals. You're taking all the layers on the bottom that are learned behaviors, and you're replacing it with the growth that comes from the center of the flower. So it's all new growth. And you're recognizing and nurturing that growth.
From the center out. So it's coming from the center out. See, I like that. Yeah.
So it's basically working from the inside out.
Yeah.
So it's, when you look at recovery, it's a healing mode. It's all about healing.
Yeah.
And once we get awareness, and we can learn, like through the 12 journeys, acceptance and surrender, it allows that new growth to come.
Yeah, I like that.
And that's where the purpose and the passion is grown from.
Yeah. So a lot of people say, how do I stop my thoughts, right? How do I stop from thinking or feeling this way? Well, you don't. No. But what you do is, because those are the lotus flowers on the outside, right? So when you shift this story in here and you rewrite that, those handle themselves. They're just effects of what's going on in here, who you are. And so that's where we, when we do the 12 journeys, we want to help people to recognize their story, especially in the roots, and rewrite that story, because the more they rewrite that, the more they're able to vision out here in the future, a more improved life, a better life. And so, but unless we handle that, then they just keep seeing a repetition of everything they've ever done. And so, yeah, go ahead. What's coming up with that?
With like addiction, it's a cycle.
Yeah.
It's a continual cycle. So you talked about fight or flight. Yeah. Well, there's freeze in there. We get frozen in the cycle of this substance abuse, thinking that we can't get out of that substance abuse, and it's breaking that cycle.
Yeah. And it is a rewriting. It's, everything that I see around neuroscience and neurobiology and how it works is, everybody wants these immediate changes. I just want to know how to do this and change it tomorrow. I want to be done. But that's not how life works. Neuroscience shows that it's by small repeated patterns that we create the complexity of our lives. And that's mathematically proven. It's also shown in research that these small repetitions are what create the long-term changes. And most people don't want to do these repetitive tasks. They just want the solution. Give me the solution. I don't want to do the work. But you became the new you through small repeated patterns and improvements, fine tuning. Is that
Yes,
accurate?
definitely. And
Yeah.
the thing that with addiction to anything, food, gambling, doesn't have to be substance abuse.
Yeah.
It's instant gratification. So you get stuck in that instant gratification loop, so that when you think that, okay, now I'm going to get clean and sober and I'm going to change my lifestyle, you're having this expectation of instant gratification. And like you said, Nick, it's the small steps. It's the small repetitions, because each small step accumulates itself into a giant change.
Yeah. Yep. And it does. And you know, we named our company Mandelbrot after the mathematician because of that. You know, the fractal pattern is a small repeated pattern that repeats without end. And you look at thinking fast and slow. Daniel, I think it was Daniel Kahneman that wrote that. Is that there's fast thinking, there's slow thinking. There's things that are instantaneous. There are things that do happen quickly. But when you're coming out of addiction, you're used to, like you say, that instant gratification. And when you look at the recovery from addiction, it's not that. It's like our court systems. It's easy to put people into the prison. It's hard to get them out. It's easy to implement rules and laws. It's hard to undo them. You know, and so many things that destroy our lives are just so easy to do in the moment and really hard to undo. And it takes growing out of it one small step at a time. And I think that's an essential key to growth: is be ready for the grind, the persistence, the resilience that you're going to have to create your life differently.
What I like about when you talk about prisons, I spent almost a decade working with inmates in prison. When you were talking about the thought process,
yeah,
people think, oh, if I change my thoughts and I change my thinking, it's going to change my life. The thing is, there's the emotional piece that sits behind it, and it's the emotions you have to address. So when you look at, if I'm having a thought about going out and using, I have to sit with the thought, because my natural reaction is a survival mode where I'm going to go out and run and just go to the liquor store and go buy me a bottle. I can't handle this. I'm going to go do this. So that in order to change that behavior, you have to address the emotion. And the one thing that I liked about the 12 journeys is when we're sitting with something, we don't have to act on it. We can just sit in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because as I teach people in recovery, there's a time element here. If I have a craving to go out and get a bottle of alcohol, and I can sit with that thought for a while, that craving will disperse. It's got a time limit on it.
Naturally on its own, right?
Yes, naturally on its own. It's got its own limitation of time. And if I can just sit with it, accept it, and not try to fight it, it'll dissipate.
Teaching that is powerful, because Nick, sorry, and hold your thought real quick.
You're good.
Nick talks about where when you're having thoughts, you have 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day. I mean, that's a lot of thoughts. I don't remember them all at the end of the day.
Yeah,
that's a lot. Yeah, and so it's easier to prune the branches, which are the emotions, to pay attention to those that are coming in, just exactly like you said, Richard. Because and then when you do that and you learn how to do that, that's something that's the learned part, is starting to recognize and be aware of those things and then sit with it and then letting it dissipate. That's a learned skill. And as you repeat that over and over, it does what Nick talked about. It's going to connect the dots up here, and that is going to go stronger and stronger and stronger as that new pattern starts to emerge. And it's empowering. You talked about, hey, you want to unlock your purpose and your personal power? Well, that's a good way. You'll start to gain confidence. You'll get excited again. You won't be dependent on that thing anymore. And talk about like feeling like a giant moment or moments from that point on, as you start to practice into that, oh, it changes everything, right?
Yes, changes everything.
Well, the other thing too that ties into what you just shared, Ryan, is that if people want to stop thinking the thoughts and they want to tackle it by trying to stop thinking the thoughts, it's like trying to cut down a tree one leaf at a time, right?
Yeah.
And if you really want to get to the core of stopping the leaves from growing, those type of thoughts, then you got to go to the tree trunk, because that's what produces everything. And so it really comes back to that core self. Is when we really pay attention to this, thoughts and emotions change by the nature of who you believe yourself to be and the story you're telling. And that's a repetition. And the challenge with addiction is it keeps us from even looking at that. It numbs out the thoughts, it numbs out the emotions, and it numbs out us having to take a look at what's going on at our core. And like you said, Richard, to just sit with that, like to just sit with a thought and not have to do anything about it, to just sit with an emotion and not have to do anything about it, just notice it. Barry McDonough talks about this, just the noticing. He says, we are the problem with our healing. He says, because most of us won't sit with and just give space for our thoughts and emotions. He says, the moment you sit with your anxiety, it dissolves on its own naturally, just like you just said. The moment you just sit with those thoughts and emotions, they just dissolve naturally. And
There's
you don't
probably
have
a
to do
lot of
anything.
us that are almost addicted to the avoidance of the truth, right?
Yeah.
Of that being a mirror.
Yeah. Yeah. Could
Because you don't
be.
want to deal with the pain, or you don't want to deal with the problem.
Yeah.
A thing that people have a difficult time with is acceptance,
Mm.
because they're always looking backwards. Like Ryan was saying, guilt and shame and blame,
Yeah.
where acceptance can be looked at from a forward standpoint. I sat with this emotion. I've got through the other side of it. Can I accept the future that I'm laying out in front of me? That's where the growth starts to going, to be able to surrender. I think two of the most important things in recovery are acceptance and surrender.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a lot of control there, I'd imagine. I want to control what's going to happen next. I want to know what's going to happen next. I want to see how this is going to play out. And if I can't see it, I want to manipulate that so it plays out the way that I want it to play out. And when it doesn't, I can use anger as a reason for me not to do anything, because anger means I'm frustrated between where I'm at and where I think it should be, and I want to control how it gets there. And if you're not doing it my way, I'm going to get mad at you, and then I'm going to use madness to justify my numbing out, my
Or any
addiction.
other excuse, right?
Yeah. And so that's where, when I say that all suffering occurs in the gap between who you are and who you think you should be, or how you think life should be, that's where we're creating our own suffering. And that surrender is, it doesn't have to go the way I think it's going to go.
Oh, yeah.
It can go any way it goes. And I know this guy over here is okay no matter how this goes. Right.
Right. And
That's where power comes in.
like I was taught by Byron Katie, accept the reality that you're sitting into. If I can't accept the reality that I'm sitting into, the only person that's going to suffer is me.
Mm. Here's the beauty too, though, Richard. Like, hold on to that and keep Richard big here. But the idea of the ideals, our visions, those are our visions. And joy also happens in the gap between who we are and our visions. When we accept ourselves as who we are, we feel more joy and gratitude for the journey rather than frustration and suffering for the journey. Because the difference between the two is we think life has to go a certain way, whereas in acceptance, we know life goes the way it goes and we're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which goes back to Angela's comment about control. We try to hold on and make it a certain outcome and all this stuff, and it's just an illusion.
Well, and like the Bible talks about that. Who of you thinking about it can add even a cubit to your height, right? Like you can't even change your hair color by
I'm
thinking about
shrinking
it.
anyway. I'm like,
Right.
the older I get, the shorter I
Right.
get. I don't understand, like fetching gravity.
Exactly. It's Richard, as we look at how that allows people to align with their purpose, is that acceptance which is from the Latin acceptare, which means to receive willingly what is. To receive willingly, I think most of our suffering is in acceptance. They say that awareness is the first step in transformation, acceptance is the second step. And our resistance, like you said, you resisted your reality, is where your suffering was created. Right?
Exactly. That's it. When I run a program, and it's called The Joy of Recovery and Beyond. Because like you said, it's the joy in that journey. Finding that joy, finding that passion leads you to where the purpose is. So when I work with individuals, a big piece of what I try to gift the people that I work with is joy. People surround themselves in recovery by looking at the past, and I build people's future from the joy. Because once you feel the joy of it, acceptance is a lot easier to take on.
Yeah. Let me ask you this on why the 12 journeys? Why do you see that as essential for healing?
I see the 12 journeys because it has a starting point of where we're non-conscious.
Mm-hmm.
And it works through awareness. It works through grief. And the root journeys are the part of the inside of us opening ourselves up. When we get to the growth journeys, it's an empowerment. And we look at the end of the 12 journeys, which is your legacy. That's what people are striving for.
Yeah.
Whereas in most recovery programs, they're always looking at what's been placed in front of them. So if a person goes through a 12-step program, and I've experienced this a lot.
Yeah.
Because I support fellowships. I support 12-step fellowships a lot.
Yeah.
But I can go into a meeting of a 12-step, excuse me, tying my own tongue here.
12-step.
A 12-step
yeah.
Meeting, and see a person that's been there for 25 years. And he's still relying on the same 12 steps, but his growth isn't moving. He's just recycling it.
Yeah.
Whereas in the 12 journeys, you're taking it from the root to the shoot to the fruit.
Yeah.
And there's a fruit at the end of it. So that's why I think the 12 journeys is so important in the recovery process, because you're looking at your passion and you're looking at your purpose, and you have a vision that's put in front of you that's accessible to you.
Yeah. And it's relative to you.
Yes.
So,
and it's your journey. It's not somebody else's journey.
Yeah. And that's where people, the idea of giantness, which I'm committed to giantness, is that each of us are going to do that in our unique way with our unique gifts and talents. And nobody's going to have the gift and talent that we have the way we have it. And when we can empower ourselves around that, then that can be realized and we can put that fruit into the world, and that's our impact. And Ryan's going to have an impact that I can't have. I'm going to have an impact that Ryan can't have, and you're going to have one as well. It's like everybody is so uniquely individual with their gifts and talents. The 12 journeys really helps people to express that, and so I just really appreciate how you're adapting it to your gift and talent, which is helping people to recover. And you're taking it in as a coaching partner with us. You're taking it into your world, and you're using the 12 journeys as part of your framework to teach others to heal. And so it hasn't replaced what you do. It's added to it and enhanced it, and given you an additional tool to teach them. Ryan, other thoughts around that? Throw you on the spot here.
Yeah, and I've watched a lot of people go through these journeys even before we had defined them as the 12 journeys.
Yeah.
And it's something that it can be really, really, really hard to see yourself and to see where you're really at. It's earth-shattering sometimes to see that this is where I'm at, and actually accept that and recognize this is where I'm at. But as you do see yourself as you really are, as we see you as giants, and go down that path and follow that process, oh my gosh, the real you starts to shine through in unbelievable ways. That the a lot of times the pathway opens up and the sun feels like it's shining again. um, and then you start to realize that hard is a construct, that you can do anything, you can be anything, you can have anything. It was only you that was getting in the way, and now you start to really live life. That is where it is so empowering, and that's where you can find a purpose, multiple purposes. And anytime life happens, because life does, and it comes in and it takes your knees out, gets you in the back or something like that, or you cramp up, metaphorically speaking. It will, I promise. You can then turn around and pull out of your backpack or your toolbox or whatever you want to call it, those tools that you've learned, and then you can apply that again. Slap the band-aid on, to heal, not just to mask it. Apply the ointment. Do the things that are needed to adjust, adapt, and grow. And it's such a wild journey, and it's individual, but it is so worth doing. It is so worth doing. And now that you have those tools, the recovery time usually is quicker and quicker and quicker. Just sometimes where something comes in that used to take you out for a week, now maybe takes you out for a day or an hour or a couple of minutes, because you can apply those tools that you've learned.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. The speed of recovery, the speed of resilience, is so big in what we do, because for me, my first round took me over 10 years just to even start to get a sense of it. Now it just takes me, when I get triggered, just maybe an hour, maybe a couple of minutes, at worst a couple of days, but never 10 years anymore. Right. Which is really nice. And so the speed of recovery is a lot faster, the speed of resilience. And that's, Richard, looking at what you're doing in the addiction world or the recovery world is you're teaching people tools to really know that they are their solution, that they are their rescuer. And you're putting that in them and helping them to recognize that and live into it.
I'd like to respond to Ryan.
Yeah, please do.
The nice thing that I heard you say, Ryan, is that you can reach into that toolbox. And the wonderful things about the 12 journeys is that those tools are accessible at any given time, because you don't have to run in a linear mode. I can pull out from a journey where I'm sitting. And I think that really assists people in recovery, rather than going step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that I have to do in a succession.
Right.
The journey offers the independence to say, well, I'm going to look at the journey of grief. I'm going to look at the journey of awareness. I'm going to look at this journey right now, because that's where I'm sitting at the moment. And that toolbox is open wide for you to pick the tool that is necessary to use at the time that you need it. And I think that's really a big piece of why I'm so invested in the 12 journeys in the recovery field, because those tools are accessible. Don't want to pull out a wrench when you need a hammer.
Right.
such a valid thing. Yeah. Don't try and repair your car with a power drill. It's not going to help, except when it does. Richard, as we wrap up here, what would be a final message you would say to the viewer, that might be facing addiction, that might be challenged with their emotions and thoughts? I mean, what message would you give them as we wrap up here?
I would give them the message that recovery is possible if you have the willingness to work from the inside out.
Okay.
It's not so much the how to, it's the want to. It's not about expectations. It's about making an agreement with yourself. And it's about taking the small steps that it takes to become a giant. That's what I'd like to leave with this.
I like that. Ryan, final thoughts here from you?
I just want, Richard, I got the opportunity to meet you like face to face, I guess, via our Zoom, and a few weeks ago, and it was an honor and a privilege then, and it's an honor and a privilege now. The people that you have helped because of your dedication to what you're doing, not only as a living but as a living testament. You've shown that you've shown them a model of, hey, look, if I can do this, so can you. And you seeing so much good in other people, and then going back and then helping them, and being dedicated to creating other opportunities and avenues for more and more people to get the help that they so desperately want and need. Man, my hat's off to you. I tip my hat. I want you to know how much I love and appreciate you for who you're being in the world. We didn't see Richard when we started, but I'm so grateful that we did continue to move forward, because now there is a Richard in my life that is one of the most committed men that I know to helping other people. And yeah, I know your impact is going to be felt for a long, long, long time. And so I'm just humbled and grateful that you spent time with us, that our paths crossed, and hope that we can continue to do much more in the future as we go down our Giants journey. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Ryan.
I like that. You had hit
that wholeheartedly. Thank you very much. Love you.
You hit on the will, the willingness. And there's a quote by George Bernard Shaw. It says, "You imagine what you desire, you will what you imagine, and at last you create what you will." Right? And so that willingness, that will, that ability to push forward is what ultimately is going to change life. And so you've been a gift to us today of showing that pathway of how to go from the chaos of a childhood that wasn't ideal, right, to creating yourself into a man that's living with passion and purpose, and showing others how to do that while overcoming addiction along the way. Like, just an incredible journey. And so that will that you had is what is creating the fruit of your efforts today. And now you're going out there and you're sharing that fruit with others. You're going out and you're planting that seed in somebody else. Let's create something amazing, and have them do the same thing. So like Ryan said, you really are living it, Richard. And we're grateful to be partnered with you. I think you're an incredible human. I love what you're doing as far as adapting the 12 journeys to addiction and recovery. I think that's a beautiful thing. I want to invite everybody down at the bottom. You see Richard's email or website address. Go visit that. You also have, we dropped early on the link to your group, your Facebook group. And I think it's, is it called The Essence of Recovery?
Yes, it's called The Essence of Recovery.
Yeah. And so join that on Facebook. Go be a part of that group. And if you know people who are in addiction and recovery that could use this message, make sure you share it with them. Grab the link on YouTube. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button. Damn it.
So you know when we go live.
Yeah.
Every single dang time.
Every single dang time. No, we have 300 plus messages on there. So just while you're there grabbing the link, just reach over and click subscribe so that you can see when we go live. So we love you guys. Yeah, you guys make the show. For those that have commented today, Angela, Lori, Ray, Hugh, thank you for you guys for all you do for our community, for being here, your loyalty to what we're creating. And help us spread the message. Yeah.
She did say F you to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all. And as always, we love you. Go make it a giant day. And we will see you in the next video. Take care.
Love you too.